Yo, what's going on everyone? How you guys doing today? Welcome back to this new video. In today's video, we're going to be going over a build for the Grandmaster Knight for this week. This week is a pretty exciting week. We have Ed to the Scratch for the very first time since the rework. The Warden slows the weapon, and also there's double loot this week, meaning that you get double materials and double weapons. So if you've been thinking about wanting to get into the GMs, this is like the perfect week to do so, since you're going to be getting so much loot. So I know a lot of you guys are going to be hopping into LFG this week, so this is going to be like the perfect build for you. Now this build is all about being able to get that completion as easily as possible. You're pretty much going to be able to deal with everything the strike throws at you and still get that completion, no matter what kind of teammates you find in LFG. So let's get into it, and first we got to talk about the must-haves of this build. For the weapon, it's going to be the Graviton Lance Pulse Rifle, and for the armor we're actually going to have two different choices. An exotic piece of armor with the Shards of Galanor perk or the Orpheus Rigs. And later when we talk about the exotic armor, we'll talk about what we have two different choices, but they're basically going to serve a similar purpose. So as long as we have the Graviton and one of the armor pieces, this build is going to work. So let's get into it, and first, since we already talked about the Graviton, let's start off with the weapons we're running on this build. So first of all, we're going to have our main star of the show, the Graviton Lance, our main weapon. The Graviton is going to be amazing for dealing with big groups of enemies, which in this strike there's actually quite a lot of. There's just a lot of small areas with lots of enemies, so the Graviton is perfect for that. And it's also going to be great for dealing with those barrier champions. The one thing that I will tell you about the Graviton Lance is to finish the Catalyst. If you have the Catalyst, please finish the Catalyst. You're going to add more damage against champions, and you're also going to be getting overshields like crazy with the Graviton Lance, since it gives you an overshield every time you break a shield. So the Graviton Lance is going to be an amazing weapon, and it's going to be the weapon that we're going to use the most in this strike. But for sure finish that Catalyst if you guys haven't. Now for a special weapon, we want a fusion rifle with choke clip. Here we have the Riptide, because I love the Riptide and it's a very easy weapon to actually get. All you gotta do is just turn in some engrams and shacks and you can get some Riptides. But any fusion rifle with choke clip will do what this one's gonna do. The main purpose of this is so we can stun those overloads with slow, and also to build up our darkness meter. The fusion rifles build up the darkness meter really quickly, so it kind of does those two things for us, and it also can put in some pretty good damage against champions or any big enemies. But again, you doesn't really have to do the Riptide. I just think that the Riptide works really well though. And lastly, for the heavy weapon, I'm gonna recommend that you take a rocket, and this is gonna be to mostly deal with champions and bigger enemies. For this strike, all rockets are going to be doing extra damage, so you just pretty much take the one that you like most. It could be the Apex, the Fate Keeper, the Crut's Termination. They're all going to be doing just extra damage, so they're going to be able to deal with those bigger enemies faster. And you definitely want to deal with those big guys fast, because there's a couple of points in this strike where a lot of champions spawn all at once, so you definitely want to get rid of them as soon as you can. Now when it comes to the super that we're running on this build, this is where the exotic armor starts to come into play. Depending on which one you're running, you gotta run a different super. If you're running the Orpheus Rigs, you gotta run Tether, and if you have the class item with the Shards of Galanor, I would actually recommend that you go Silence and Scroll. They're both gonna do a similar thing, which is clear big groups of ads. They just gotta do it a little bit differently. Now moving on to our abilities, for the Grenade and the Melee, we're gonna have the Withering Blade and the Dust Field. There's overloads in this strike, meaning that our status abilities get crazy value. Both our Withering Blade and our Dust Field are going to be able to stun those overloads. And besides, they're just really good abilities in PvE for like crowd control, the slow and the freeze. They're just fantastic. And they're going to be building up your Darkness Transcendence meter really quickly as well, so we can spam Transcendence a lot more. Now for our aspects, we're going to have Stylist Executioner and Ascension. First of all, Stylist Executioner is going to let us go invisible whenever we defeat something that's effective at an elemental debuff. This is going to give us a bit of safety, and we also have quite a few things that are going to be able to proc Stylist Executioner to make us go invisible. We're going to have our Ascension. Whenever we hit it, we jolt something, and whenever we kill that jolt target, we go invisible. Same with our Grenade and our Melee. Every time we slow or freeze, we're going to go invisible, and same with our supers. Whether we tether something, or we silence and scroll something, it's also going to make us go invisible. Even our Transcendence Grenade is going to help us go invisible, since it does slow and scorch. I know I never really mentioned the Transcendence Grenade, but you know, it's just something that's always there, something that's always good. So Stylist Executioner is going to add a little bit extra safety and just forgiveness to the build, in case we get like caught out in the bad spot. Now our second aspect is gonna be Ascension, and Ascension is gonna do a couple of things for us. First of all, it's gonna amplify us, meaning that we can take advantage of the Galvanic Armor perk in the artifact, giving us a free 30% damage distance. It's also gonna jolt enemies around us, helping us with that clear, and also giving us a very easy way to not only proc Stylus Executioner, because whenever we kill something jolted we go invisible, but also stun overload. So if an overload rushes you and somehow ends up right next to you, which does happen because man do they love teleporting, you can just quickly hit the Ascension and not only stun it, but give yourself some damage distance and also jolt pretty much everything around you, including the champion. Ascension is going to be a fantastic aspect that you're going to be able to spam a lot. You'll be surprised how fast you can actually spam Ascension with some of the stuff we have on this build. You're basically always going to have that damage distance and always a way to jolt anything that you want. Now moving on to the fragments, the first one we're going to start with is going to be the Facet of Solitude. Whenever we land rapid precision hits, it will sever the target, making them do less damage and be a little bit less dangerous. And also whenever we kill a target affected by sever, it will also make us go invisible. So that's a nice little bonus. But the main reason we definitely want to use this is for the severing effect, lowering damage. It's going to affect champions, bosses, mini bosses, pretty much any of the dangerous enemies. They're going to be doing less damage and they're just less likely to kill you. Next up we have the Facet of Protection. When we're surrounded by combatants, we're more resistant to incoming damage. It is 15% at base, and whenever we're transcendent, it's going to be 25%. There's going to be a lot of areas where we're going to be surrounded by enemies, especially the boss fight. So having that extra damage resistance is definitely going to make a difference, and it's going to make it so you survive things that otherwise you wouldn't. You are definitely going to want Facet of Protection for this one. This strike is definitely very similar to the one we did last week, where this strike gets pretty hectic towards the end, but I wouldn't say that it's as bad as last week's. It's definitely a lot easier though. And the boss just doesn't have as much health. Next up we have Facet of Balance. Whenever we defeat targets with light or darkness energy, we're gonna get back melee or grenade energy. Light gives you melee, and darkness gives you grenade energy, which just translates to us being able to get abilities back faster and just spam them a lot more often. Next up we're gonna have the Facet of Dawn. Whenever we hit something with our power melee, it's gonna make us Radiant. Radiant is gonna be amazing since it's just free damage. We just get 25% extra damage on all our weapons just by using our melee ability. And since we have two melees, we're actually going to be able to activate this a lot, especially with all the other ability energy we're getting back thanks to our other fragments. So Facet of Dawn is going to be fantastic, and it will also give our rockets anti-barrier if you want to break the barrier with your rocket. So that's something you can do. And lastly, we're going to have the Facet of Hope. Whenever we have an elemental buff, our class ability regenerates more quickly. And since we're always going to be amplified, we're always going to be getting back some of that increased class ability energy. So we can use our ability again and basically get amplified again. It means that we can pretty much be amplified the whole strike and always have that 30% damage resistance. It's pretty amazing. It's just 100% uptime on Ascension. It's beautiful how these two things work together. So now let's move on and actually talk about the armor. I think we're going to be starting this off with the Orpheus rig. So if you decided to go with the Orpheus rig, make sure that you fire it anytime you see a big group of enemies. You're always going to be getting a ton of your super back. It is really hard to not get like half your super or at least 40% of your super back with the Orpheus, especially whenever there's a bigger enemy involved, like a champion. So if you see a group of odds next to the champion, always go with the tether. Not only is it going to make dealing with the champion easier, but also everything else that's around it. It's very good, especially at the end and at the halfway point where you gotta defend the ghosts. You fire a tether and you suppress a bunch of enemies. They can't really do anything, they're just kind of like standing there. And you're getting your super back really quickly, as well as getting your abilities back as well. So you can spam them a lot. So the Orpheus is going to be fantastic. Just make sure that you don't hold on for your super for too long. As soon as you see an opportunity, take it. Now everyone, for the class item in Silence and Scroll, you are also going to be getting basically 50% of your super back as long as you stay alive. You cannot die after throwing down your Silence and Scroll because it doesn't actually give you the energy back till it's finished. So you pretty much have to stay alive till you get the energy back. But as long as you do that, you're basically always going to get 50% of the energy back because the Silence and Scroll, I've never seen it give less than that. It is crazy all the damage that it does, that it's basically always going to give you that 50%. Now, while the Silencing Scroll doesn't really have the suppressing power of something like the Tether, it's definitely going to give you back a ton of prismatic energy back, so you're going to be able to pop Transcendence a ton if you went with Silence and Scroll. And also the Silence and Scroll is pretty much the lead button for any Overload champion. If you throw it right at them and hit them, they're not going to be able to get out of there, as long as you're also shooting with your other weapon. There's basically no way for that champion to escape, and it's pretty much going to die. But like I said, both of these choices are going to be fantastic, and they're pretty much the same thing, which is ad clearing. Now we're going to be taking a look at the mods that were running on this build, and also the things that were running on our... Now we're going to be taking a look at the mods that were running on the build, and yes, it's going to be the same mods for if we're using the class item or the boots, and basically we're running the same mods on both. So first of all, starting off with the helmet, we have Void Siphon, so we can make some orbs with our Graviton, and also Heavy Ammo Finder to keep our rocket topped up. If we're running the Tether, you could also slap on Harmonic Siphon, and then slap on something like Radiant Light on Powerful Friends. For our gauntlets, we're going to have Boy Loader, Focusing Strike, and Fastball. Fastball so we can throw our dust a little farther. Focusing Strike so we get some class ability energy. And lastly, Boy Loader is just so we can reload our Graviton faster. Now for your chest piece, I was actually running triple arc resistance since there's a lot of arc. And I really do mean a lot of arc on this strike. But you could definitely still get away with running two arc ones plus a void one, because there is quite a lot of stuff that also does void. So if you want to cover everything, definitely go void and 2 arc resistances. But 3 did just fine, especially against those snipers. It definitely saved me quite a bit against the snipers. So I'm gonna leave this up to you. You can either do 3 arc or 2 arc and a void. Now for the boots, we have Recuperation, Absolution, and then a Solar Scabby. Solar Scabby is just because I have a solar rocket, so change this according to whatever rocket you have. And then Absolution is so we can get our abilities back with orbs, and then Recuperation is so we can heal with orbs. And lastly for the class item, we have Utility Kickstart, Empower Finish, and then Proximity Ward. I wish a lot of the other mods actually work with Ascension, but since they don't, we basically just use Utility Kickstart all the time, so we can spam even more of them. And then Empower Finish and Proximity Ward is just for whenever we go for finishers. This gives us an armor charge, and this makes it so we get an overshield every time we do a finisher, meaning that we're probably not gonna die even if we finish someone in a really bad spot. Now for the artifact, we don't really have anything really special. We have Creeping Chill, Counter Energy, Radiant Orbs, Galvanic Armor, Transference, and Shield Crush. But with that final mod, that's actually going to be the whole build. Like always, I'm going to put down a link in the description, actually 2 links this time. One for the build with the class item, and one for the build with the boots. So I'll make sure to label them so you know exactly which one you're equipping. And if you guys do end up actually using the build, make sure you come back here and tell me what you guys thought about the build, and if you actually ended up getting something good from the Nightfall. This build is actually pretty similar to the one that we did last week, with a couple of changes, but if you guys watched last week's video, you will definitely recognize a lot of the things that we're using. Because believe it or not, you actually can't run into like the same problems in both strikes. This one is definitely easier than the one last week, but you basically always just run into rooms with lots of ads, and this build is just perfect for that, for destroying ads, while having all that damage resistance, and basically just spamming abilities. But don't worry, since the next build is going to be definitely very unique, that I'll be surprised if some of you guys have actually seen it before. But anyways, thank you for watching today. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. Good luck with your GMs, especially with double loot happening right now. I really hope that you guys take advantage of it. But once again, thank you all for watching. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.